All right, what up, team? It is day 3 of the league. It has been a fucking banger, minus all the mercs one-shotting everyone. That shit is trash, but I have made a lot of changes to the build, so I figured it's time to do a build update, and let's go through some of them. First and foremost, let's talk about the build performance and how it's doing. I would say it's going, honestly, exceptional. I think it's doing everything I wanted it to do, and a little bit more, especially in regards to the damage portion. I didn't think it'd be so easy to get millions and millions of DPS. I'm at like 14, 15 million DPS on this character, and I've been spending most of my money and time trying to figure out how to fucking, work defenses and really just fixing block and recovery, which I do have done, by the way. I'll get into that. But overall, I would say the build is performing extremely well. It's very fast. The clear with barracks is honestly insane. The single target is obviously fantastic. Overall, I think the build is performing exactly as advertised, actually significantly higher above in certain marks and a little bit lower in others, and I'll get into all that. To start, let's talk about the CI swap and when you should swap to it. I didn't mention this in the notes, so that's my bad. I will go through and update this eventually. But in order to go to CI, especially out of campaign, you can go really, really early. The only things you really need are discipline. You need Zealot's Oath, because this converts your Golem's life regen to ES regen. This is really nice to have, by the way. And then we're going to need these 3 Leech Nodes plus Ghost Reaver. You want to have all 4 of these. You don't need the Leech Mastery, although it is nice to have. And then the last thing that you'll need before you swap is an Incandescent Heart. Once you get an Incandescent Heart, Zealot's Oath, these 4 points, and Discipline, and again, out of campaign, you can just run Wrath, Discipline. You don't need to run any other auras. You don't need to run D-Term either, and I'll get to that in a second. But once you have all of that, then you can spec CI, and you'll automatically be like 30 times tankier. Another thing that I wanted to talk about was Pyroshot Clasp and how good this is with Shaper of Flame. This is why we don't need D-Term when we're coming out of campaign. You honestly don't need D-Term until you run Aegis, so you can just shut it off forever until you pick this up. But Pyroshot Clasp with Shaper of Flames is such an insane defensive layer against Fizz. It is so nice to have early on. It's so noticeable. It's absolutely fantastic. I cannot recommend this belt enough. The moment you get Shaper of Flames, I would pick this up. This is an absolute banger belt, and it's only replaced by my Stygian Vice with my Hypnotic Jewel with Storm Shroud to give me ailment immunity. Let's also go over some of the other item changes as well. So I ended up running Aurora Shimmeron pretty much instantaneously. Shimmeron just gives you so much damage. I will mention the downside of Shimmeron is massive, but the amount of damage that it gives you early is incredible, especially with the chance to block spell damage is really nice once you get an Aegis and you run Tempest Shield. I'll get into auras in a second. But I also went with Ravenous Passion. I decided not to do a Crown of the Inward Eye because honestly, they're insanely expensive early on. I thought they were going to be like 10, 20 C, but to get like a decent one, not that you need a decent one, it was still like 80, 100, like almost a Divine. Like, fuck that. I'd rather run a rare helm. It's not that good. A Ravenous Passion is really nice. I really like this helm because not only does it give you rage and 30% more damage, it's a huge damage modifier. It also just gives you strength. The strength roll is super nice to have. So I did stick with this instead of Crown. Also, you'll notice I have an Ash of the Stars. Funny enough, the actual Ash of the Stars is cheaper than the fucking new versions of Ralakesh. Ralakesh are pretty much dead in my opinion. There's no reason to buy them, especially when you can buy your best in slot amulet. I don't give a fuck what POB says. Especially when you can buy this amulet for cheaper. This was 7.5 div for me. I guess it was technically 9.5 because I did roll it to 27. This is way better than fucking the Ralakesh amulet combo anyway, and also just we don't need to buy the amulet now, and you're able to run rare boots, which is really nice to help offset the amount of uniques that we have in the build. Of course, Barracks Respite, I already talked about this. This is just a fucking goated item. This build is made by this in its mapping, in my opinion, so this is an absolute must. Since we're no longer running Endurance Ralakesh because they're so expensive, we need to get Endurance charges from somewhere, and that's where we anoint Deflection. That is this passive right here. This gives us 8% chance to block attack damage and a 25% chance to gain endurance charge when we block. Obviously, it only applies once we get an Aegis going, but this is where you're going to get your endurance charges from, and these two things and mapping are just insane defensive layers once they're combined. Next, let's talk about our aura combinations. You'll pretty much always run Wrath because Wrath is just super good. When it comes to everything else, it kind of is a mix and match depending on what you're doing. So like I said, Discipline you want to run early because you just won't have a whole lot of ES, but eventually you'll get your ES pull up and you won't really need it. In my opinion, I'm okay with being around like 3k. I think it's plenty. Determination is one that you don't really need so long as you have a Pyroshot class because you have so much Fizz mitigation. The only reason we turn D-Turn back on is because we take an Aegis Aurora and we will need the armor to get more ES recovery. That's pretty much the only reason to take Determination. And once we actually drop the Pyroshot class for an ailment immunity build, we will need to have armor to offset the Fizz loss. Tempest Shield is something that we only run once we get an Aegis Aurora. I was running farming Flesh and Stone up until that point, and you could argue that dropping Flesh and Stone and just grabbing Discipline with some mana res efficiency is the better option. I prefer the 20% DR, but once you get Aegis, Tempest Shield is the best aura without question. The 25% chance to block spell damage is insane. It's a huge layer of defense. You got to have it for mapping. I think Tempest Shield is amazing. You can also take Vitality randomly here and there if you have open mana res for another aura. Vitality is really nice. The regen is really good to have, and it offsets Shimmeron, and the degen of Shimmeron is horrendous. It's not too bad because we have Leech, and of course we do have a net gain in regen, but it fucking sucks when you're versing bosses and your Shimmeron's just shitting on you. And I do plan to get rid of this item immediately because the degen is pure fucking space cancer. But the problem is his Shimmeron gives us mirror tier DPS for literally no cost, and the chance to block is also super nice. It is truly unfortunate we will have to use this for fucking ever. The tree is pretty much the exact same as it was. Instead of taking this mana wheel though, we take this one. This one is super good because it gives us cast speed and arcane surge effect, so more mana regen on top of giving us max mana, and it allows us to slot a mana mastery if we need it. Other than that, pretty much the exact same thing. The next big goal with the tree is to get rid of these fucking horrendous waste of passive points that is this entire lightning wheel. We'll need a cluster jewel to do that, and we'll need awaken unbound elements support to offset the loss of the 50% increased effective lightning elements. You must have this. We can get Overshock, which will give us the 40%, and then we'll make up the other 10% through Awaken Unbound Element support. You could Thread of Hope this if you wanted to. The only issue is that we're going to Thread of Hope down here to get Divine Shield and Glancing Blows. So that's kind of a pain in the ass, but that's the general direction right now. The last thing that I wanted to mention was just some support gem swaps that we can do. So you'll see that if we get Awaken Elemental Focus, this is an ass ton of damage over Power Charge on critical. The problem is that we need some sort of Power Charge generation. One of the things you can do, perks of having a 2-button build, is you can assign Power Charges to Orb of Storms. You can easily get Power Charges by swapping Area of Effect or Power Charge on critical. And this was actually from a comment on one of my videos, but you can also swap Chain for Culling Strike support. I would not do this while you're mapping, but when you go to fight a boss or something like that, like you're doing a T17 or a Pinnacle, anything along those lines, definitely throw Coal in this. It's just a free 10%. Absolutely no reason not to. Lastly, I wanted to mention the Rune Graph of the Fortress. I bought one of these from Faustus for like 60C. It's in the Kelgar and Runes section. Super nice to have. Hey, shut the fuck up, you guys. Jesus. Anyways, super nice to have. The 10% reduced attribute is really annoying, but I was able to solve it, so you should be okay. That's pretty much all I got for you guys. I am on my way to do some T17s. I'm getting very close. I probably need to farm just a little bit more, get a little bit more damage, and then I should be absolutely ready to slam T17 farming, which will be dope. If you guys have any questions, again, stop by the stream. You can find me on the YouTube channel or at twitch.tv/clovehitch, whichever you prefer. I will be there. But until then, boys, deuces.